Hello, friends, and welcome. I am Devashish. I secured All India Rank 301 in UPSC Civil Services Exam 2023. I will be sharing some strategies and some mindset that you can try during attempting prelims exam. I qualified prelims 2022 and 2023 two times in a row, and I'll be sharing with you the answer copy of my prelims paper of this year. I hope you can see on the screen. Now, this was the first page of the prelims answer of the prelims question book. So the first question, in which of the following regions was Dhanya Katak, which flourished a prominent Buddhist center under Mahasangika is located? Now there are four options given in this. Now I consider these fancy questions. If you know this, for sure you can attempt it. Otherwise, you cannot do any guesswork in such questions. So since I did not know its answer, I simply crossed it so that I do not waste any time again and again in thinking about this question. Now, the second question was again a bit of a tricky one because I knew that second and third statements were correct. About first statement, I was not very sure. So the statement is how many of the statements are correct. So for sure, I know that two are correct, and I'm not sure about the third one. So clearly, I can eliminate that one and none. Either answer has to be B or C. Now, this is a 50-50 chance, which we must take simply because prelims is very tricky. It's difficult for everybody, and you have to take some chances. And I took this chance. I marked C in this, which turned out to be the wrong answer. It was B. So, such risks have to be taken. Now, consider the third question. Ancient South Indian, and these three names are given. Now, I knew that Murichi was a port. This was very sure. So, I went ahead with the ports and marked it. So, in such questions, now again, this is a fancy question, as I told in the first one. Fancy question, if you know it, then attempt it. If you don't know, then it's better to skip it. Now, coming to the fourth question, this is again the same kind of fancy question because I had no idea about what is Vatta Kirutal was. And then I just simply crossed it because I will not waste any time in thinking about this question. So in UPSC, you do not have this time the prelims cutoff was 75 marks only. So you do not have to attempt all the 100 questions correctly. You have to choose your battles. You have to choose what questions suit you, what questions you know you can do some calculated guesswork. Only attempt those things. Now the fifth, again, this is which kingdoms were in early 8th century AD. I had some idea about Hoysals of Tolibedu, then Garhwals are in Kumaon, Uttarakhand, Kakatiyas of Warangal, Yadavs of Devgiri, but I could not recollect their time period. So I skipped this question. So now, can you see the mindset when you are sitting in prelims paper? First five questions are bouncers. You do not know any one of them for sure. And then you just control your senses and then continue because it doesn't matter you have started paper from the beginning or from the end. What matters is how much marks you are getting at the end. Now, the sixth question, this is repeatedly multiple times in PYQs that Devi Chandraguptam is written by Vishak Dutt. So clearly, I could eliminate that first one of match of the columns is given wrong. And for third one, Milan Pano by Nagarjuna, I was sure that this is correct. Now, I do not know about the second and the fourth one. Now, again, here, a calculated guesswork has to be put in. That I'm sure कि चारों सही नहीं हो सकते और कम से कम एक तो सही है ही है. Now I have to make a guess. Two, three, one, two, or three. और जनरली यूपीएससी के जब आप प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस एनालिसिस करोगे यू विल फाइंड आउट कि जब चार ऑप्शंस इन्होंने दिए हैं तो चार में से या तो दो सही हैं या चारों सही हैं या कोई भी सही नहीं है मतलब दे गो बाय द इवन पेयर्स. So considering that thing, that guesswork strategy, I went ahead with marking option B, which turned out to be the correct answer. So guesswork आपको करना ही पड़ेगा. You have to learn the art of doing guesswork. और इसीलिए टॉपर्स बार बार कहते हैं कि आप प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस देखो, आप बार बार ज्यादा से ज्यादा टेस्ट सीरीज लगाओ ताकि आप वो जो गेस वर्क करने वाले हो यू कैन प्रैक्टिस डूइंग दोज तुक्का मास्टरगिरी और गेस मास्टरगिरी which many people call it. You have to learn that art as well because it's not about random guessing, it's more about calculated guesswork. Now coming to the next one about community reserves. So see when you this question I had not read about in my syllabus, but I had a rough idea what about reserves and about natural sanctuaries, wildlife sanctuaries that we all study. So now again this is a example of some calculated guesswork again. I for sure I know that when an area is notified, hunting shall not be allowed in such an area, and people are allowed to collect non-timber forest produce because we have read that Tendupata and minor forest produce are allowed to them. Now read the fourth statement. It says that they are allowed traditional agricultural practices. This is a dubious statement simply because in many tribal regions, traditional practices include slash and burn, which we call zooming also. So such practices cannot be allowed in a community reserve, because if such things are allowed, the entire idea of marking an area as a reserved place will go to waste. So fourth statement should be wrong. Second and third has to be correct. About the first statement, we are not very sure. But then again, analyzing the UPSC patterns, whenever they give the name of an organization, that Chief Wildlife Warden is the governing authority of such a forest. Now, Chief Wildlife Warden is a single man, a single person. How can they be the governing authority of such a forest? Just a random guesswork. This is just how you go about the thought process. That CR Management Committee is supposed to be the Community Reserve Management Committee actually does this work, and not the Chief Wildlife Warden. So then going by my calculated guessworks, I knew that चारों सही हो नहीं सकती, सिर्फ एक सही भी नहीं है, because second and third statements are correct. So then 50-50 का guess work I have to take, या तो दो सही है या तीन सही है. चौथी स्टेटमेंट पक्की गलत है, दूसरी तीसरी सही है, पहली के बारे में मैं श्योर नहीं हूँ. तो कैलकुलेटेड गेस वर्क मारने के लिए देन आई वेंट अहेड विद ओनली टू आर करेक्ट, बिकॉज पहले वाली स्टेटमेंट मुझे थोड़ी सी डूबियस लग रही थी. सो आई वेंट विद दिस एंड दिस टर्न्ड आउट टू बी द राइट आंसर. Similarly, moving ahead, in question 20, everybody has read Article 16 subclause 4, that constitution, which is about reservation policies. Now Article 335 is something which I was not very sure कि इसमें exactly है क्या. So statement 1, when you read statement 1, Supreme Court has held in some judgments that reservation made under 16(4) of the Constitution would be limited by Article 335. Sounds okay. It sounds legit, because some judgments, there are no extreme words. The statement seems legit. Now read the statement 2. Article 335 defines the term efficiency of administration. Now this is again a previous year trend, that whenever it is mentioned that Constitution defines this, Constitution explicitly mentions this, those statements turn out to be wrong. So defines the term. This is something which should shake your head. कि ऐसा Constitution does not have that much details to define each and every term. Definitions and procedures are given in the sub-clauses. So for that matter, again, this becomes dubious, and I went ahead with marking option C, that 1 is correct and 2 is incorrect, which indeed turned out to be the right answer. Now moving ahead, India, despite having uranium deposits, depends on coal for most of its energy production, which is very true. We all know that it is true. Second statement, uranium enriched to the extent of at least 60% is required for the production of electricity. Now there are two things in this thing. पहली चीज तो ये कि जब भी यूपीएससी कोई नंबर देती है 60%, 40%, जनरली ये पाया गया पास्ट ईयर ट्रेंड से कि वो गलत होता है. नाउ आइदर यू गो बाय दैट guesswork and mark option C, or second thing, if you know the concept that for making electricity you need enrichment of only 2 to 3%. For making atom bombs, you need 90% plus enrichment. So 60% का तो कहीं enrichment की कोई बात ही नहीं थी. So for that regard, if you know it, then go with C. Otherwise, guesswork also will lead you to option C. I am not promoting explicit guesswork, but I am saying in tough situations when paper is very tough, you can go by the tradition set by UPSC PYQs, that you can take some calculated risk. And in this question, marsupials are not naturally found in India. It seems legitimate, okay, because we have never read about marsupials in India. Second statement is an extreme one. It says marsupials can thrive only in montane grasslands with no predators. Now, you must have read in environment that there are predators for each and every species of some or the other kind, or species would have gone extinct if there are so touch me not kind of species that they cannot thrive without. They can thrive only in a specific type of climate with no predators. So again, I did this thought process and marked C, which turned out to be correct. Now, this 23rd question, C, invasive species specialist group develops global database. Belongs to which of the following organizations? Now, this is a fancy question. If you know this, you know this. If you do not know this, you cannot do any calculated guesswork in this. So it's better to drop these questions. Now, consider the following fauna: lion-tailed macaque, Malabar sea vase, sambar deer. How many are active after sunset? Now, if you have visited any sanctuary, or if you have just a basic idea about animal instincts, we know that macaque is a monkey. So it won't be roaming out in the night, and deers also don't roam in the night. I think Malabar civet is something which is nocturnal. So I went ahead with only one, which turned out to be correct. So this is just a guesswork. Now wiggle dance, I had no idea at that time, so I just crossed it, because this is a fancy question, and I could not take the risk of marking fancy questions wrong. Now coming to the next one, see question 26. It says some mushrooms have medicinal properties, some mushrooms have psychoactive properties, some mushrooms have insecticidal properties, and some have bioluminescent properties. Now, you have no idea of mushrooms. You just know that they taste good if some people are fond of eating them. Otherwise, to attempt such a question, See, there are no extreme words. It says कुछ मशरूम होती होंगी, you never know दुनिया के किस कोने में कैसी मशरूम उग रही है, और हो सकता है उसमें कोई मेडिसिनल प्रॉपर्टी हो सकता है कोई साइको एक्टिव प्रॉपर्टीज हो। तो इसने सम लिखा है, सम में अगर एक भी मशरूम ऐसा कोई पूरे वर्ल्ड में किसी भी कोने में पाया जा रहा है, तो ये स्टेटमेंट आपका सही बन जाता है। सो यू गो बाय दैट इंग्लिश कि इसने सम लिखा है, सम का मतलब कहीं पे कोई भी हो सकता है। सो बाय दैट लॉजिक आई वेंट अहेड विद ऑल फोर आर करेक्ट एंड इट टर्न्ड आउट टू बी द राइट आंसर। Now about Indian squirrels. See, we do not know much about Indian squirrels. We see them every day, but we do not read about them. The nest bana ke burrows in the ground or it stays in the tree hole. They store their food material like nuts and seeds in the ground. Okay, sounds legit. They are omnivorous because they eat rodents. So this again a calculated guesswork had to be done. Either only two are correct or all three are correct. So I went ahead with only two are correct, which ultimately turned out to be true. So in see again in such questions you can take a calculated guesswork simply because if you can eliminate even one option, they build nest by making burrows in the ground. But you must have seen that they live in the trees also. So this statement is likely to be marked wrong. जैसे ही एक गलत होगा, how many are correct में your answer would come around to 2, right? तो इस तरीके का कुछ कैलकुलेटेड गेसवर्क का इन क्वेश्चंस में ऑप्शन रहता है अगर आप मौके पे सोच पाओ तो। In question 25, where they are talking about regal dance and directly four options are given, you cannot do any calculated guesswork there. Now, moving ahead on 28. Now, this is again about the thing I told that no extreme statements. Some microorganisms can grow in environments with temperature above boiling point. Some microorganisms with temperature below freezing point. Some microorganisms in highly acidic environment. So it has given some. You never know कि कौन सा हो रहा है, कहाँ पे हो रहा है। कहीं पे भी एक भी स्पीशीज ऐसी मिल गई जो हो रही है, आपकी स्टेटमेंट गलत हो सकती है। इसने पहले ही बहुत बैलेंस स्टेटमेंट लिखा है कि कोई हो सकता है। So इसको आप फेस वैल्यू पे सही मान के चलते हो एंड यू मार्क ऑल थ्री आर करेक्ट एंड दिस विल टर्न आउट टू बी द राइट आंसर। So it is not just about your knowledge, it is also about how you can think and analyze the things written in English. आपको पढ़ के अंग्रेजी आप उसकी समझ पा रहे हो, वो किस सेंस में वो बात कहना चाह रहा है, राइट? मूविंग अहेड. So which of the following species following makes a tool with a stick to scrape insects from a hole in a tree or a log of wood? Now in this question, see, a fishing cat is a cat. Now, orangutan is a monkey. Otter, I know, lives in water, and sloth bear had a big nose. So I had just rough idea that scraping insects from a tree using a log of wood would need some kind of muscular action. So I just had this calculated guesswork and I marked orangutan monkey, which turned out to be the correct answer. But now this is a fancy question. If you can take a risk, if you can afford this risk, when you know some idea, when you have seen some wildlife documentary, when you have some rough close approximation, then only attempt this. Otherwise, it is better to leave such question. Now, moving ahead, consider the following industry: fertilizer, oil refinery, steel plants. Green hydrogen is expected to play a significant role in decarbonizing how many of the above industries? Now, it's very simple. ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन किसको डिकार्बनाइज कर सकती है? तीनों को कर सकती है। ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन इज अ सोर्स ऑफ एनर्जी। जहां पे भी बिजली का यूज हो रहा है, वहां पे अगर आप ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन से बिजली बना के यूज करेंगे तो इट विल हेल्प। सो दिस कैन फिट इन एवरी ऑप्शन. Now consider the next one. G20 group was originally established as a platform for finance ministers and central bank governors. Sounds legit. Digital public infrastructure is one of the priorities. It also sounds legit. So I mark both 1 and 2. Now, the 76th question, with reference to coal-based thermal plants in India, consider the following statements. None of them uses seawater. Now, this is a dubious because it's an extreme statement कि कोई भी coal-based thermal plant जो है वो सी वाटर यूज ही नहीं करता. You never know किस कोस्ट पे कौन सा थर्मल प्लांट है जिसमें सी वाटर यूज हो रहा है. None of them is set up in water stress district. Again, this is very dubious क्योंकि कई बार ऐसा रिपोर्ट हमने न्यूज़पेपर्स में पढ़ा है कि वाटर कंटेमिनेशन हो गया, वाटर की स्कार्सिटी है, फिर वहाँ प्लांट में पानी यूज हो रहा है. So this is also an extreme statement. And none of them is privately owned. Now this is again a dubious one because small level का जो thermal plant है वो privately own किया जा सकता है, छोटे scale वाला. So then either one is correct because third वाले पे I was not very sure. First and second I was sure that they are very dubious. So then I have to do 50-50 guesswork and I went ahead with D because it sounded more legitimate to me and it turned out to be the right answer. Now, Volbachia method. See, if you have read newspapers, if you have read some magazine, you would have marked it correct. But then it is a fancy question. I would not suggest doing any kind of guesswork in such questions. So the bottom line is that in fancy questions, you do not do any guesswork. In questions where such multiple options are given, like one, two, three statements, and then how many of them are correct, there is a scope of some guesswork. Go ahead with those questions. In questions where you can eliminate one or two options and you are left between 50-50 choice, definitely mark those. Simply because 50% chance है आपका आंसर सही हो जाएगा, right? So I think this with this mindset, as I've shown you the paper, you can proceed ahead, keeping a similar mindset that you clearly scrap off the fancy questions, you do not attempt them, and in somewhere you can do a calculated guesswork. Go ahead. I hope this will help you, and thanks for joining in. Okay, bye.